When the company announced we'd all be working from home until further notice, I remember the strange mix of emotions that hit me. Relief, optimism, even excitement. I imagined slow mornings with coffee, quiet afternoons of focused work, evenings spent with my daughter. No more rushing through traffic or skipping meals. I was naive. The first week, things felt manageable. I set up a small home office in the corner of the living room, created a calendar, blocked off time for breaks. I told myself this was an opportunity to find balance, to breathe. But almost immediately, the boundaries started to blur. Emails came in earlier and later than they used to. My manager started adding quick syncs to the calendar, one at 7:15 a.m., another at 8:30 p.m., just to catch up on progress. Slack messages started arriving during dinner. At first I felt guilty not answering right away, then anxious, then obedient. I was being conditioned to respond instantly. One Friday evening, just as I was putting away dinner plates, my phone buzzed. Need a quick update before Monday's pitch. Should only take 5 minutes. 5 minutes turned into 2 hours. My daughter fell asleep on the couch waiting for me. By the third week, there was a quiet, unspoken shift in expectations. The idea wasn't just that we were working remotely. It was that we were constantly available because of it. Availability became a weapon, used to test your dedication. Miss a message? Expect a follow-up. You okay? Haven't heard back. I started getting nervous if I took a shower without my phone nearby. I brought my laptop to the kitchen while cooking. I muted cartoons during Zoom meetings, praying no one noticed the clutter in the background. I stayed logged in at night, not working, just there like a security camera with a heartbeat. I was exhausted, but the more I gave, the more they took. One night around 1:47 a.m., I woke to the sound of my daughter crying from a fever. I held her close, rocked her to sleep, and when I finally laid her back down, I checked my phone out of habit. 3 messages from my manager. Can you reformat the deck for tomorrow? Need it ready by 7:30 a.m. Assuming you're up.
No greeting. No empathy.
Just assumption. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about flexibility. It was about control. Control disguised as trust. They didn't care that I was a parent, or that I was tired, or that I was a human being. I had become a blinking green on a screen, expected to be always on, always ready, always silent. They called it remote work. But what it really was remote control. I didn't react right away after that 1:47 a.m. message. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at those words. Not angry.
Not even surprised.
Just empty. There was a time I would have jumped up, opened my laptop, and started editing the deck immediately, sick child or not. But that night, something in me finally snapped. Or maybe, more accurately, clicked. Because I realized what I had become. Not a valued employee, not a collaborator, not even a professional. I was just a service. A button they pressed. A body with fingers to type and a face to nod in meetings. And worse, I had let them do it. The next morning, I didn't log in at 7:30. I made pancakes for my daughter instead. I checked my messages at 9:15 and, sure enough, there were 5 missed Slacks, 2 emails, and a calendar invite labeled urgent follow-up. I didn't join it. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened a fresh document. Not a project update. Not a task tracker. A list. I started writing down every time I had worked past contracted hours, every just a minute that turned into late-night unpaid labor, every call during weekends, every Slack ping after 8 p.m. By noon, the document was 7 pages long. That week, I began quietly reclaiming my time. I stopped replying to messages after 6 p.m. I blocked off lunch breaks on my calendar and took them. I muted work notifications after hours. It wasn't easy. Every silence felt like a risk. Every boundary I set felt like I was inviting criticism or retaliation. But no one said anything, at least not directly. Until Friday. My manager scheduled a touch base at 5:30 p.m. I joined, knowing exactly what it was. He didn't waste time. Hey, I've noticed you haven't been as responsive lately. Everything okay? I smiled. Everything's fine. Just honoring my work hours more strictly, trying to be more focused during the day. A pause. Then a fake laugh. Of course, of course. Just want to make sure you're still all in, you know? We're a team, and this is a crucial time. That word again. Team. Used like a leash. I'm absolutely committed during working hours, I replied calmly. But outside of those hours, I'm not available unless it's a true emergency. He didn't say it, but I saw the disappointment flicker in his eyes. A crack in the performative understanding. After the call, I knew the clock had started ticking. I'd either get pushed out or overlooked for everything that mattered. But strangely, I felt lighter, stronger, even proud. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I was asking to be treated like a person, not a machine. And I was just getting started. After that Friday call, things started shifting, just not in the way they expected. The next week, I became invisible in all the ways that made them uncomfortable. I stopped over-explaining. No more enthusiastic 10 p.m. responses. No more smiley faces in Slack replies at midnight. I did my job, did it well, and signed off at 5:30 sharp. Not a minute more. And something strange happened. They noticed. Not with direct confrontation. No, they were smarter than that. Instead, I got tagged in less strategic discussions. My name was skipped during brainstorms. My input wasn't needed on calls I used to lead. I was still doing the hard work, but suddenly, I wasn't being included in the glossy parts. The visibility, the praise, the credit, it began to vanish. And still I didn't cave, because I had something they didn't know about. Evidence. I had been quietly documenting everything. Screenshots of after-hours requests. Calendar invites outside my contracted time. A spreadsheet logging every unpaid task completed after hours. I even had Slack timestamps, message after message sent while I was supposed to be off the clock. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about building a record. A trail that proved how blurred their boundaries had become and how one-sided flexibility really was. Then came the annual performance review. It was always a formality before. A pat on the back, a vague keep it up, and a promise that raises were coming soon. But this year, it was different. My manager opened the meeting with a smile I didn't trust. "We've reviewed your performance," he said, "and while your output is still solid, there are some concerns about visibility and engagement. Some feel like you've pulled back a bit. Are you still feeling aligned with the team's energy?" I knew what that meant. I paused, then leaned in slightly. "Just to clarify, am I being penalized for sticking to the work schedule you gave me?" His smile faltered. "I'm still hitting deadlines. Still delivering. The only thing I've changed is that I'm no longer available at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., or 6 a.m. And I've got the documentation to show what I was doing before, outside of contract, unpaid, unrecognized." He opened his mouth, but I didn't stop. I just wanted in writing what exactly you define as lack of engagement. Because if you're measuring it by unpaid overtime and around-the-clock responsiveness, we might have a deeper issue. Silence. Finally, he muttered something about team dynamics and soft contributions. But the tone had changed. The power had shifted. And he knew it. Later that day, I sent a polite but firm email to HR. I asked for clarification on working hour policies. Attached a few of my logs. Copied legal, just in case. They didn't respond right away. But I knew I'd just fired a warning shot loud enough for the walls to hear. I wasn't just resisting anymore. I was preparing to reclaim everything they thought I wouldn't fight for. After the email to HR, things got quiet. Not peaceful, tense. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but tightens around you like a storm building off the coast. For 3 days, not a word.
No acknowledgement.
No reply. But I noticed changes. Meetings where I used to be the first one asked for input, now I was last, if at all. Files I normally handled were reassigned. People who used to joke with me during stand-ups now kept their cameras off when I spoke. It was like management had flipped a switch, isolate and wait for her to crack. But what they didn't know was I was done breaking. I had spent months bending, accommodating, sacrificing sleep, health, and time with my daughter just to be a team player.
Now?
I had clarity and a plan. Step 1 was already in motion. HR had finally responded, cautiously. They thanked me for raising valid concerns and promised to look into current communication norms regarding off-hours expectations. It was empty corporate speak, but that wasn't the point. I had their attention. I had planted a flag. Step 2? I started speaking with others. Quietly, privately, I reached out to a few coworkers, those I trusted. I asked simple questions. Do you ever feel pressured to respond after hours? Have you noticed the line between work and life disappearing? The answers were more revealing than I expected.
Yes. Constantly.
All the time.
I thought it was just me.
I thought I was the problem. I wasn't alone. I was part of a silent majority. Exhausted, burned out, afraid to speak up. And that realization gave me fuel. Together, a small group of us drafted a collective statement. Nothing aggressive. Just a clear outline of expectations, boundaries, and a request for formalized policies on after-hours communication. We didn't demand overtime pay. We simply wanted the right to log off without fear of retaliation. We sent it to HR, 22 signatures. More followed. And suddenly, they couldn't pretend it was just one disengaged employee. Step 3 came unexpectedly. A journalist I'd gone to college with posted a LinkedIn article titled, "The Dark Side of Remote Work. When Home Becomes the Office You Can't Escape." I messaged her privately, told her I had a story.
Proof.
Anonymity was non-negotiable, but I'd share what I could. We spoke for 2 hours. I told her about the 1 a.m. messages, the performance review gaslighting, the culture of guilt. She asked one question that hit me hard. What made you finally say no? I paused.
My daughter, I said.
She started saying, "Are you working again?" Every time I picked at my phone. The article published 2 weeks later. It didn't name names, but it didn't have to. The quotes, the screenshots, the statistics, it all painted a brutal picture. Not just of my company, but of a culture that thrived on silence and self-sacrifice, where productivity was measured in exhaustion. The impact was immediate. My company sent out a formal communication to reaffirm respect for working hours. HR announced new training on digital boundaries. My manager scheduled a one-on-one to clear the air. And just like that, I went from being difficult to being heard. But I wasn't interested in their damage control. Not anymore. Because I had already begun planning my next move, and it didn't involve staying. The one-on-one my manager scheduled came with a suspiciously friendly calendar note. Touch base, open conversation, no pressure, slightly smiling face. That smiley face might have been the most dishonest part of the whole meeting. I joined with my camera off. He started with small talk, trying to ease into what was clearly a scripted moment of corporate reconciliation. He mentioned the article. Very insightful, some tough truths in there, then pivoted quickly to what he called a fresh start. "We value your voice," he said, "and we'd love for you to be part of shaping the future of our culture moving forward." I let him finish. Let him spin his web of politeness and future promises. Then I said, calmly, deliberately,
I appreciate that.
But I've already made my decision. A pause. I'll be resigning. 2 weeks' notice effective today. I didn't wait for his reaction. I had rehearsed this moment for weeks. Every long night, every anxious morning, every ignored boundary had led to this. He tried to recover. Let's not rush anything. I'm sure we can work something out, adjust some expectations. But it was too late. I had already signed a new offer, one that respected boundaries, defined work hours, and came with something I hadn't felt in a long time: dignity. The last 2 weeks were a blur. A strange mix of awkward goodbyes, forced appreciation emails, and late attempts to pick my brain before I left. But I kept it professional. I smiled, finished my projects, and logged off each day on time. My final act? I sent an all-team email on my last day. Nothing dramatic, just honest. Subject: logging off for real. I wanted to thank many of you for the collaboration, the laughter, and the memories. Working remotely changed how we function, but it shouldn't have changed how we're treated.
We deserve space to rest.
Time to think. The right to not respond at 11 p.m. and still be considered committed. I hope the next chapter of this company finds balance. Mine already has. All the best. Redacted. When I logged out for the last time, there was no applause, no ceremony, just silence. And for the first time in a year, it felt peaceful. A week later, I started my new job. My hours were clear. Expectations transparent. No Slack messages after hours. My manager actually said the words, "Please don't check email on weekends." It felt like stepping out of a storm into sunlight. And while I still carried scars from what the old job demanded, I also carried something stronger. The memory that I didn't just survive it, I walked away on my terms. Because no matter how many pings they send, how many emojis they add, or how softly they say, "Team," your time is still yours. And it's okay, more than okay, to take it back.